Hi everyone, welcome to the Primary 6 YouTube channel. This video is for Primary 6a, 6b and P6-7. I hope everyone's keeping well and staying safe. This week I'm going to be telling you about some of the things you're learning about at home. As always, if you have any questions, then please remember just to ask your teacher on Teams, or if you would like to send in any work you have been completing, you can also do that as well. For weeks 4 and 5, pupils will undertake a mini topic based on political figures and politics in general. Obviously, this is a topic which we assume pupils are a wee bit more familiar with during the current circumstances. We're not expecting pupils to be watching the news every day, but certainly when pupils come into school, they would be quite familiar with the names I have on this board here anyway. They would have a lot of opinions, they've maybe heard a lot of things about them. So we assume that pupils do know a little bit about this, and if not, they can do further research as part of this topic and learn a bit more about everything. So during the current COVID circumstances, pupils and I'm sure families have heard lots about the three names I have on the board here. There are other political figures that of course pupils can choose to look at in more detail. These were just three suggested ones that pupils might be interested in and they might know a bit about already. So on the board here we have Donald Trump from the US, President of the USA. We have Nicola Sturgeon, who is from the Scottish Government, and Boris Johnson, who is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And these are figures alongside many others that have been the forefront of many news articles. But as I mentioned previously, if pupils are aware of other political figures, or they maybe want to research and find out about some other political figures, obviously these only represent the United Kingdom, Scotland and America here, so they might have an interest maybe from doing their country fact file and want to look at the political figures in that country that could build on their work from that, then that could be something that they look into. So these are just suggested figures just to clarify to look at, and pupils can choose their own figure to look at. So this topic is really all about getting to know more about politics. So there is a little bit of a research task involved, looking at a political figure of your choice, which could be one of the three mentioned before. So there are some questions that are also on the topic overview for pupils to maybe think about when starting their research, but really their research can go beyond this and add in lots more information that they find about their political figure. So maybe as a starter, what is their current position or role? More detail about that. So what does it mean to be the President or the Prime Minister, the First Minister? What does that mean? What is their history of progress towards achieving this role? So, for example, were they always involved in a political career? Did they have to work hard and finally achieve their goal? Sorry, this is slipping here. Or, for example, the three examples I've chosen really do have very different backgrounds in politics. So it would be interesting for people to look at that in a bit more detail and to maybe map that out. And what are their current main opinions and priorities? So this is the things that you'll hear about. It might link to some more recent news, or looking at why they're well known. It often is those kind of things. People might already be aware of some things, but a little bit more research to refine what they know about the politicians. What are their main opinions? What are their main priorities? What are the main things that they are interested in and working on? What is the main things they are saying? When looking at recent news, you might come across articles or videos from debates or conferences and stuff. What is the figure saying? What is their opinion? Stuff like that would be very interesting. And as well, of course, it is not just the research part. There are some extra files and worksheets available on Teams to get children thinking a bit more about politics. Particularly Scottish politics and the UK politics and a wee bit on maybe Donald Trump in America as well, as I know the pupils are very aware of him as a political figure. And there is also suggested activities and topic overview for you to undertake as well, related to getting to know more about politics. So to work alongside our topic on political figures, pupils will also undertake a writing topic for weeks 4 and 5 on writing a formal letter to their chosen political figure. So some things to think about when this week doing your plan and next week actually writing your letter. So for the plan, the first thing to be aware of on the plan is we've kind of laid out how to structure and lay out your letter. So it is important for pupils to be aware of the proper layout of a formal letter. A formal letter being one that you would send to a person that is important, an official person, for example, a political figure. The opposite of that being an informal letter, which you might send to a friend or a family member, someone you know personally. So there are slight differences with the letter structure and layout. There are examples that should be included as well with your files uploaded in Teams to show you how a letter structure and layout should work. And before, another target we're asking pupils to think about is the use of appropriate language and topics discussed. Pupils can be very tempted to go informal with their letters. It is important for them to be aware that there's a difference in the way you would write a letter to a friend or a family member and a person who is receiving a formal letter, such as a political figure. So it is important for them to be aware of who they're writing to and how they might be coming across, especially when, for example, writing a letter to a figure like Donald Trump. A lot of the pupils are very enthusiastic about things they've seen online about him, but you have to bear in mind that you're writing a formal letter. You have to assume that he's going to be reading this. What is he going to think about the information that you're writing about? So you do need to be aware that you're showing respect in a way that you're writing for a person in a formal position, so you are writing them using formal language. And also bear in mind things like chattiness. So for example, the way your sentences might be formed, you wouldn't include things like, oh, I think, and just wait a minute, and little things like that pupils like to include in their sentences sometimes, which are a bit more chatty. Those should be avoided, especially in a formal letter, because obviously it is just wasting time and you need to make sure you're getting your point across nice and clearly. The structure of the plan, I've written down some points here, but you'll also see them in the writing plans that are uploaded to Teams. So with a letter, you need to usually start off by stating why you are writing. Often people like to say because I was told to, but I would try and encourage them to think of why they've chosen this person to write to, why they're interested in them, maybe saying that they've got a few questions for them, they've maybe seen they've done a bit of research on them, they've learned about them and they're interested in finding out a bit more. The main part of the letter will go on to the pupils' questions. Some questions might come naturally. It might be more personal questions through your research about their history, or it could be more related to their current priorities, current opinions and things that have came across in the news. I would encourage pupils to try and, rather than just ask 3 questions like, oh, number 1 this, number 2 this, number 3 this, we do need the pupils to be trying to include more detail in their writing. So for example, maybe add detail and explain why you're asking that question. So why is that question important to you? Are you interested in their history because you're also curious about developing a career in politics one day? Are you curious about their history because you have found out that they came from a country or a place that you didn't expect and you want to know more about how their journey went? Are you interested in something they've said in the news because it affects you? So the pupils explaining a bit more about why they're asking the question that they're asking. They're not just saying, oh, why did you say this? Why are you asking that question? I'm asking this question because I'm particularly interested as it affects me, or something. And they could also include more details by saying things, what do they already know? and what they would like to find more about the question. So for example, if it's related to something in the news currently, for example, maybe schools opening, potentially at some point, we don't really know, but the people maybe has a question like that for the political figure, and they might want to ask, I know that the schools can't open because of this. They can add detail in that way, if that makes sense. So hopefully that gives you a better idea. I would look at maybe the writing plan alongside this video to help you be more confident in what you're doing with your writing task. And finally, at the end of a letter, it's important not just to leave it. Obviously we do need to sign it off, but before that it's quite good to summarise your main points so it's nice and clear, when the person finishes the letter they remember what the main things are that you were talking about, if you go over them briefly, and then thank them for taking the time to read their letter. I hope that was helpful for your learning this week, but if you have any questions, remember you can ask your teacher on Teams. See you next week. Bye!